Is now to talk more about sanctuary state bill and the other bills that are up in Sacramento that may pass or may just fall by the wayside in these final days of the assembly session is State Assemblyman Phil Ting from San Francisco. On the sanctuary bill, that is a clear test of politics versus practicality.
Right.
The politics of this were very emotional. Kevin DeLeon, the Senate president, wanted to declare the state a sanctuary state in response to the Trump administration. And they've said that basically the question is, however, who gets sanctuary? And that's what the Assembly is having to grapple with, and understand that it's not necessarily a done deal.
Well, the pro tem's talking to the governor. I think the governor's got some very strong feelings about it. What we're doing is trying to protect people from being able to drop off their kids at school. We heard about that incident where a gentleman got pulled over dropping off his daughter at school. We're hearing about ICE agents going into courthouses where just regular people are trying to exercise their civil rights and go into courthouses. The Supreme Court chief said, no, you can't go into courthouses. So we're really trying to make sure it isn't that there isn't cooperation, but that local law enforcement don't become ICE agents.
But this bill takes a step further than that. It says they don't want any cooperation. And there are several law enforcement agencies and people around lawmakers around the state that say, no, we actually want to be working with ICE, let's say with gang task forces, with drugs, with human trafficking. We don't want to be prevented of that as part of a cover in order to protect this other area. There's also questions about what constitutes crimes that people would be allowed to stay in, like felony assault with a gun, felony assault with force to provide bodily injury. You could wind up getting a pass to stay in the States.
Right. Well, we absolutely want local law enforcement to cooperate with federal law enforcement, no question, right? I think the question is, do we want people to be pulled over at a stop sign and because they happen to not have documents that they get detained?
Right, but the problem is that this bill takes it further than that. Who's going to be the arbitrator on this? Is it going to be the governor that ultimately decides?
Well, I think the governor and the legislature right now. I mean, the assembly, it's sitting back in the Rules Committee right now, and it's still being worked out.
Okay, second thing up, housing. We've been watching weekly as whether or not Sacramento is going to be able to pass those bills that are supposed to aid in the housing thing. The big thing there is a question about adding a fee onto real estate transactions. What's the dynamic going on there? I mean,
the biggest challenge with housing is housing affects coastal California enormously, but once you get into inland California, you can actually afford to buy a home. You can buy a home for $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. So the big challenge is we have a lot of inland, in particular Democrats, right now, given what happened with the transportation gas tax.
Raising the gas tax, they're not crazy about raising another tax.
They are not crazy about raising another tax, and on top of it, right now we have Republicans, based on what happened in cap and trade, probably not willing to go up, who might have been interested in going up.
So that one's a wobbler as well.
But everything else seems like it's just about there.
Now, one other question. You had a bill that would continue the rebate program for electric cars because we are trying to get more, and they said no to that. How does that fit in with the whole state's environmental push?
So we weren't able to get agreement. I mean, we're hopeful that maybe next year. So what we are doing is we're going to be approving a cap and trade budget. There's going to be more money for electric vehicles in that cap and trade budget. So that's another Band-Aid for this year. This was about having a 12-year program, not a one-year program, because the problem is selling cars, letting consumers know about rebates. You can't let them know 1 year after another and constantly changing. You need to have some certainty, right? Consumers need certainty. People who sell cars need certainty. So what we wanted to do was have a 12-year program and really make sure that it's certain.
You wanted certainty, but it sounds like a majority were uncertain about whether they wanted it. Politics versus practicality. State Assemblyman Phil Ting, thanks for joining us this morning.